Okay, so just to begin with a short summary of the Parsha, this week's Parsha is Vayeitzei, and the Parsha opens where the previous one literally ends. Yaakov leaves Be'er Sheva. He's traveling now with the instructions of both his parents to Haran. Remember, he's fleeing the wrath of his brother Esau, who obviously wanted to kill him. And he's on the journey. He's also part of the journey. He's not only fleeing, but he's there to try find a wife from the family of Lavan. And what happens is nightfall miraculously falls. Yaakov stops to rest. He places stones beneath his head. And it's amazing that in that moment of fear, vulnerability, isolation, he's granted the most probably mysterious, majestic visions in the Torah, the Sulam, the famous ladder, which stands on the ground with its top reaching into the heavens. We read that angels ascend and descend this ladder, and Hashem appears to Yaakov. He promises him divine protection. He promises him the land of Israel, and that he'll be the future father of the nation, and that he would be similar to the blessings he gave Abraham. He would bless the families of the earth. Yaakov awakens from the dream. He's awestruck. He declares this place Beis Kel and vows that Hashem will be his God. I'll touch on more of obviously the latter incident in the dream shortly. Arriving in Haran, he meets Rachel. Again, this happens at the well. He agrees to work 7 years in order to marry her. We know the whole story of the deception by Lavan, that in fact Leah is given to Yaakov first as a wife. We know the story. Eventually, Rachel also becomes the wife of Yaakov. Through Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah, 11 of the 12 tribes are born. All the time that Yaakov works for Lavan, and in fact comes to 20 years. 20 years he works in the house of Lavan. He's exploited. Lavan is dishonest, tricks him at every stage. Yaakov nevertheless is faithful. He works diligently. He works every day as he should. But eventually Yaakov flees with his family. Lavan chases after him, confronts him, and ultimately they make a covenant. A covenant of separation, let's call it, is established. The Parsha ends with Yaakov encountering Machanaim, which is the camp of angels welcoming him back towards the land of Israel. Now again, the most incredible, if you like, part of this Parsha is in fact the symbol of Yaakov's dream, the ladder. And Chazal, our rabbis of blessed memory, the early thinkers, Rishonim, the Acharonim, they see this ladder as much more than just an isolated mystical event. They actually see it as a blueprint of spiritual life. They see it as a map of Jewish destiny, and something from which every Jew should get meaning from. And I'll go into a little bit of that now. So let's unpack the most important possibly, although again, Yaakov does get married, he fathers children, so there are many important episodes in this parasha, but let's focus to start with the ladder, the dream. Okay, so first of all, Yaakov is alone. Okay, it says Vayeitzei Yaakov. Yaakov leaves, he flees Be'er Sheva, he's totally by himself, not with a wife, not with children, not with companions. Rashi, quoting the Midrash, says that when a tzaddik, when a righteous person leaves a place, its beauty, splendor, and glory depart with him. So despite this spiritual stature that he's leaving behind, understand now he comes, when he leaves, he's got no wealth, he's got no protection, as I said, no family, no teacher. Esau is literally hunting him. His parents have sent him away. Not in a bad way. Rivka sends him away for protection. He gets the blessing of Yitzchak and Rachel to go find a wife, but he is literally sent from home. He knows nothing else. Darkness falls. The sun sets prematurely. It's a miracle in itself, which Rashi tells us. And it almost symbolizes that even nature is pushing him into the loneliness that is the night. And at that moment, when he's tired, when he's frightened, he's vulnerable, he's far from home, Hashem gives him precisely at that time the vision that becomes the foundation, if you like, of Jewish identity. And the message, I think, is unmistakable that a Jew's greatest spiritual breakthroughs often occur when he feels most alone, when he feels most in the dark. And that's when Hashem seems to open up the heavens. Um, Again, we need to know quite clearly that the ladder isn't given to Yaakov at home, surrounded by his family, holiness, not giving to him in his shul, in his house of study. It's given on the road where he's exposed, where he's alone, where he's vulnerable. And again, there's a profound teaching in that as well, that spirituality isn't the product of perfect conditions. And a Jewish soul grows precisely when life becomes unsettling, when it's anything but what we would think are the ideal perfect scenario circumstances. We know that the ladder, mutzav arza, that it's entrenched in the ground, v'rosho magia shamayma, and the top of it reaches to heaven. It's a beautiful image that in itself. Um, Torah could have shown Yaakov angels. It could have been in a divine fire, could have been a heavenly throne. But instead, what is the symbol that Hashem chooses is that of a ladder. So again, there must be some important lessons to be derived from the symbol of a ladder. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says that the ladder is a clear symbol. He says perhaps the clearest symbol of what it means to be a Jew. So he says that what a Jew is, he's simultaneously connected to two worlds. Mutzav arza, he's absolutely rooted solidly into this material world with work, family, struggle, responsibility. But at the same time, v'rosho magia shamayim. At the same time, he's always striving upward. He's never satisfied with mediocrity. He's always reaching towards Hashem, always reaching for moral greatness. Again, it's like that candle, the flame, that you may try to put the candle down or to its side, but that flame always aspires upwards. Judaism, as again you all know, rejects the belief that spirituality requires withdrawing from the world. It also equally rejects that worldly life cannot stand alone without a higher purpose. It's literally the marriage between the two. And that ladder teaches us that synthesis, that we build heaven, we create divine moments precisely while we stand on earth. And every rung on that ladder would represent another good decision, another mitzvah, another moment of growth. That's the concept of the ladder. Rashi addresses, and so do the other commentaries as well. It says, "V'hinei ma'achei olim v'yordim bo," and behold, there are angels ascending and descending. Now again, it doesn't make sense that it should first say ascending. It should first say that they descend, right? Because angels come from heaven. So Rashi explains that firstly, the angels who accompanied Yaakov into the land of Israel, they cannot leave the land. They ascended, and new angels, those of the diaspora, descended to guide him. So you needed a fresh set of angels, if you like, to carry on the journey in Chutz La'aretz, in the diaspora. And this in itself is quite a powerful message. A Jew should think that when he steps into a new phase of life, he receives new spiritual support. So a life transition, new angels, new challenges, again, new angels, new fears, new angels. But again, it also hints to something deeper as well. And that is that the angels first ascend, they first go up because they reflect our actions here below. So our rabbis of blessed memory teach us that the ministering angels, the Malachei HaSharet, are created from mitzvot. What does that mean? It means that our actions generate spiritual movement upward between Hashem and ourselves and Hashem brings down, or yeah, he sends down blessings. So our actions are going up heavenward, and because of our actions going heavenward, Hashem is drawing down, Hashem is sending down blessings towards us. In other words, a Jew begins the process, and heaven, in other words, Hashem responds. And one could say that this ladder displays the system of cause and effect. Our ascent creates the spiritual descent. And again, what's beautiful about it is not just a theoretical or theological statement, but in fact, it's telling us quite emphatically that our growth shapes reality. Also important to realize that although the angels go up, they also descend. So again, it's not a one-directional escalator that's only going one way. It's not just one way to perfection. It's in fact a ladder. And we know that ladders require effort to climb and brings exhaustion. We know that if you miss a step, you're going to fall. You're going to lose your balance. Sometimes you're going to slip down. And the angels' movement downwards, particularly downwards, mirror the human experience. That life is a continuous cycle of ascent and descent, going up and going down. So there are going to be in our lives times of motivation, times of enthusiasm. There's also, unfortunately, going to be times of stagnation. There are going to be times of doubt. There are going to be times when we have absolute spiritual clarity. We're going to have times when, God forbid, Hashem feels distant. And the message of the ladder is that the descents, the coming down, are also part of the divine design. They're also part of Hashem's plan. A Jew doesn't fail because he descends. He fails only if he stops climbing, only if he stops getting up again and climbing the rung up again. In fact, the Baal Shem Tov writes that sometimes Hashem sends us a spiritual descent to teach a person the depth of his soul. Because again, when a person feels, it's only when a person feels empty does he truly discover then what he truly yearns for. And again, let's just unpack this a bit more. Why a ladder, not a staircase? And again, we need to understand what is the structural difference between a ladder and between a staircase. Okay, so the obvious one is that a staircase has a solid path, a solid connection, connecting each level. A ladder, on the other hand, requires deliberate grip on each rung. There's a gap between the rungs, and you can't climb that ladder if you don't have proper intention, if you don't have proper balance, if you don't have commitment, if you don't have effort, if you're not prepared to take some risk. And this, in fact, is the Jewish condition, that spirituality isn't automatic. It demands of us conscious choices, and every rung is earned. Again, as I said, with a staircase, if you think about it again, your one foot is always secure. On the ladder, it's really true. You climb, but you're always climbing with a certain vulnerability. And what's important, and what the ladder teaches us, and what Torah teaches us here and in so many other places, that the vulnerability, the moments of vulnerability are moments of holiness themselves. In other words, a Jew that constantly strives despite the uncertainty is the Jew who ultimately reaches heaven, reaches that divine place. What you find as well, just carrying on with this episode with Yaakov, the dream of the ladder, the angels, and Hashem appears to him. And what does Hashem say? B'nei anochi imach. Behold, I am with you. And Rav Soloveitchik says something like this. He says Hashem doesn't promise Yaakov an easy life, right? Nowhere does he say, Yaakov, this is going to be plain sailing, smooth sailing. But what does he promise? He promises us his presence. So we don't have a promise of comfort. Yaakov is not promised comfort. He's not promised a smooth journey. He's not promised that he's going to avoid all conflict. But what he is promised is, I am with you. And now the ladder becomes something else. It becomes a symbol of a divine relationship. And the message that Hashem gives us is, as long as you're climbing, even if you slip, I'm holding the ladder. And the greatest comfort a Jew receives is not this removal of a struggle. Because again, if we're honest with ourselves, we know that while we're living, while we're in this world, there's always going to be struggle. So it's not the removal of the struggle, but it's the assurance that the struggle is meaningful, that it has some sort of meaning. Yaakov wakes up, as I said in a summary, and he says, Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh v'anochi lo yadati. Behold, indeed, Hashem is in this place and I didn't know it. And again, this is possibly the cry of every Jew who discovers spirituality later than he expected. And the Kotzker Rebbe, he says, why did Yaakov say, I did not know, v'anochi lo yadati, I did not know? Why didn't he rather say, I did not see? And he answers, because awareness is the essence of spirituality. Sometimes Hashem is in a moment. In fact, Hashem is in every moment, but we're just unaware. Yaakov's awakening is the awakening the Torah seeks in every Jew. It's a realization that spirituality is present even in moments that seem far from holiness, what we'd least expect to be something holy. And what our Parsha, what Vayeitzei teaches, is that a Jew can be on the run. He can be exhausted. He can be far from home, afraid, and still, in those circumstances, which seem less than ideal, experience revelation. We also know that many of the commentators see the ladder as a metaphor for prayer, that a Jew begins anchored to earth, surrounded by the concerns of daily life, and then he ascends rung by rung. So one begins the morning prayers with Psukei de Zimra, verses that praise Hashem. So it's an awakening of the heart. Then one goes to the Shema, which declares Hashem's unity. And then we climax, if you like, with the Shemona Esrei, where we reach heaven, where we're speaking intimately with Hashem. And the angels ascending reflect the sincerity of our tefillah rising upward. The angels descending reflect the blessings that return to us from heaven. So that's, of course, the other understanding of the angels first to go up and first come down. One of the explanations is simply this: it represents our prayers ascending, and please God, the spiritual bracha, the spiritual blessing descending. So what does this mean to us if we say practically? Practically, what's the takeaway practically? So what we definitely can say is that there's no Jew that is so distant that his ladder doesn't reach heaven. There's no Jew, we can say, that's so broken that his ladder's still not standing. And there's no Jew whose spiritual efforts are unnoticed by Hashem. We should know that every rung is a mitzvah, every tefillah, every prayer is a rung. Every moment that we resist temptation, that we don't give in to our Yetzer Hara, is a rung. Every act of kindness is a rung. Every word of Torah that we learn or teach is a rung. And of course, every single rung counts. And again, what we have is that Hashem is in the uncertainty. Okay? We feel vulnerable. We're taking the steps up, even though there's a gap between one step and another, even though it takes faith and it takes courage and there's a risk involved. We need to know Hashem is there with us in that risk, in all the uncertainty. We also need to know that descent is not failure. And again, this can apply to so many individuals. A teenager who's struggling with identity, a parent who feels overwhelmed. And again, it's just part of the process. As long as we're climbing, as long as we're getting back on that ladder, the descent is part of the process. There's a beautiful Gemara term which says, Yerid shetzorich aliyah. You have to go down first in order to go higher. One way of understanding it as well is a bow and arrow type of analogy, that you pull back on the arrow in order for that to go further forward. So sometimes you have to go low. If you think of someone wielding an axe, say, pulls it down to go forward. That pressure, the strength, if that comes from the descent, and that's part of the ascent. Anochi Imach, Hashem says, I am with you. You're never going to be alone in any of your climbs. Um, I want to go on quickly, if I can, just to cover another. I always try to at least cover two topics in a little bit more depth. I want to cover the concept of Leah and Rachel and what seems to be their differences. And in this Parsha of Vayeitzei, it says, Vayar Hashem ki snu'a Leah. Hashem sees that Leah was snu'a. And again, snu'a could be misinterpreted. It could be translated, probably it is in most Chumashim, as hatred. It doesn't really mean hatred. It doesn't even mean rejected. Um, Rashi and the Ibn Ezra make this all clear. It means less loved. I'm not saying it's great in itself, but it's not, God forbid, that Yaakov hated Leah. He loved her less. She was the one that was unseen. She was the one, for whatever reason, was emotionally overshadowed. We know that Yaakov loves Rachel deeply. His heart is with her. Leah, as we know, is given to Yaakov by Lavan in deception. And she's always somehow living in the shadow of that love. Not rejected entirely, but not seen. Okay? You can say not despised, but certainly not chosen. And literally, it's precisely Leah, the one whose pain is invisible to others, of whom the Torah says, Vayar Hashem. Hashem saw, Hashem noticed, Hashem understood, Hashem cared. And here we see something so important, that Hashem's compassion is there or leans towards those whose pain is quiet, those whose others may overlook, those who cry without anyone noticing. And again, Leah's life begins in pain. And Rashi says, why? He says, Veinei Leah rakot. The eyes of Leah were soft, they were weak. And Rashi famously explains that she's been crying. She's been crying for so many years, and that's why her eyes look like they do. Why was she crying? Because Rashi says, Rivka, people were saying, Rivka has two sons, Lavan has two daughters. The older daughter will marry the older son. So Leah was crying, knowing that she had the destiny with Esav. And her entire identity begins with suffering. It's not self-pity, but it's deep spiritual fear. Yaakov never intends, as we know, to marry Leah. Yaakov doesn't even think of Leah, right? He only has eyes literally for Rachel. His love for Rachel is immediate, it's natural, it's powerful. And the Torah says about Leah, what happens? Vayar, he sees that she is the less loved one, should we put? Vayiftach et rachma. And he allows her to give birth. Hashem saw that Leah was the less loved one, therefore he literally opens her womb. Now, Hashem's response here to emotional neglect is not punishment, certainly not, but in fact blessing. He actually gives Leah healing. And what Hashem is teaching through this Parsha and through the episode with Leah is that a human's dignity is absolutely sacred. And when there are others who are or fail to protect it, Hashem himself will intervene and Hashem will do what's necessary to protect. In fact, Leah's fertility, we'll contrast that with Rachel's infertility, but Leah's fertility is not a biological event, but it's a divine act of compassion from Hashem. And we actually see this in the names that Leah gives to her children, right? First son is Reuven. Kira'ah Hashem ba'ani, because Hashem has seen my affliction. Hashem sees me even when others don't. It's the beginning of redemption through recognition. Ra'ah, Hashem sees. Shimon, she names her son. From Shama, ki Shama Hashem, ki snua anochi. Hashem has heard that I am this less loved one. And again, she's not saying that Hashem knows I'm hated. It means again, and even the Ramban, Nachmanides says, I'm the unseen one, the less desired, the secondary one. And Leah experiences this emotional invisibility, and she senses at least Hashem listens. First of all, Ra'ah Reuven, Hashem sees. Now Hashem is Shama, Shimon, Hashem hears. What about the son Levi? Comes for Va'ata hapam, this time, Yilaveh ishi elai, my husband will attach himself to me. Again, we're seeing here the depth of her hurt. She longs to be that emotionally chosen. She yearns not so much for romance, but she's longing for the belonging. And longing, as we all know, the sense of wanting to belong is universal. And Torah is able to give it a voice. Yehuda, right? The name Yehuda. Hapam odeh Hashem. This time I will thank Hashem. And our rabbis say that this moment is so great that Leah becomes the first human being in history to offer pure, spontaneous gratitude. A woman, right, who's overlooked by humans, becomes the mother of the tribe that carries Hashem's name, right? Yehuda, Yehudim, we are Jews, are named after that. We know that Yehuda is the tribe of David. We're going to see all the lines that come from Leah. I'm going to quickly go just to contrast this with Rachel. Rachel's suffering is no less deep, but it's different in nature. Rachel is loved, she is chosen, she is wanted by Yaakov, but she's barren, while Leah is fertile. Both of them cry, both of them suffer, both of them misunderstood. What does Rachel say? Hava to Yaakov, Havali banim vim ein meta. Give me children, or I'm as good as dead. And Hashem listens to Rachel as he listens to Leah. He says, Vayiftach et Rachma. He opens the womb, Vayiskor Elokim et Rachel, and he remembers, Hashem remembers Rachel. And again, what this teaches us as well is that Hashem responds to different pains differently, but certainly with equal compassion. No suffering is ignored. What's especially true is that Hashem is especially close to the brokenhearted. We say in the davenings, Harofeh lishvurei lev, he heals the brokenhearted. Listen, literally, Ashvurei lev, we say in the davening. When the world out there sees charisma, sees beauty, sees charm, sees status, sees popularity, what does Hashem see? Hashem sees the tears that are shed quietly, the longing that no one else acknowledges, the disappointment that sometimes covered up by the smile, the goodness that goes unnoticed, efforts that someone puts in but no one applauds. And Leah embodies this. This is the embodiment of Leah. And Torah is not merely recounting events, but it's teaching us a very important moral principle, that what we need to do is we have to be able to see people the way Hashem sees people, right? And it's not really just being emotional or emotionally sensitive, but it's in fact a halachic, a spiritual imperative. We need to emulate the ways of Hashem. Hashem sees people that are downtrodden and suffering. We need to especially train ourselves to be able to see those types of people. Just to go into some of Leah's greatness, right? Just understand, she's the mother of 6 tribes. She's a mother of Levi, the tribe of the Kohanim. She's a mother of Yehuda, from which come the kings of Israel. And she's a mother of Mashiach. She is the wife that's buried with Yaakov in Marat HaMachpelah in Hebron, not Rachel, who's buried along the road in Beit Lechem. So again, I now need to wrap up now. Both of them are women in pain. Hashem responds to them both. But Hashem sees in Leah the root of redemption. And we know, I'll just end with this, that Chazal teach us, our rabbis of blessed memory, that Sha'arei Dim'ah, the gates of tears, are never closed. Why? And the reason being because tears come from the deepest part of the soul, that part of the soul that's like Leah, and that's the energy of Leah, part of the soul, part of the person feels unseen, unprotected, unnoticed, and Leah's tears create these spiritual realities, and from those Hashem brings forth the greatest, Kuhuna, Malchut, kingship, Mashiach, praise of Hashem, Yehuda, all of that comes from Leah, the one who feels unnoticed. Maybe the last takeaway, and this I'll end, is just first of all, the issue of the ladder, to realize that life is all about climbing, life is all about always making sure we're going higher, that the descent, we may fail, let me use that word, not fail. We may slip, we may fall down, but that's part of the process. And in fact, that descent may even lead to a greater ascent. And Hashem is always with us. Hinei anochi imach, Hashem says to Yaakov, I'm not giving you promises of going to be easy, but I'm promising that I'm here for you, I'm here for the ride, I'm here for the journey. And let's be like Hashem looks upon Leah. The people out there maybe put on a brave face, but they're hurting, they've got pain, they're crying, they're tears. Let's make sure that just as Hashem, Ra'ah, sees them and Shama listens to them, that we're able to do the same. I hope you got a little bit out of this shiur. Wishing you all a wonderful Shabbos. Have a good night.
Thank you.